Oh man, every now and again I get an epiphany. I figure out exactly what I want to say. And I want to nail this to the wall. This is an article written by Smash JT, and in it, Jeff is trying to play centrist between a false dichotomy of the religious right and the progressive left.
Those of us buried in the sands of internet time know that the gaming industry has been no stranger to cultural battles, and for years now, the community has fought back hard to preserve the creative freedom that made gaming a groundbreaking artistic and entertainment medium.
What community is that, Jeff? Come on, be specific. No, he's going to use slippery language. He doesn't want to be associated with the community he's talking about, so he's just going to generalize. What's funny about this article is I don't recall a single instance where Jeff has actually ever come out and said that he has a hardline disagreement with what is going on in the industry right now. His coverage just implies it all, right? But has he taken a hard stance? Has he told the professionals that what they are doing is objective wrong? Or has he even gone as hard on these professionals in the industry as hard as he's going on the personal preferences of these randies on X? Oh, I'm sorry, these are apparently religious preferences.
Gaming is about escapism, creativity, and enjoyment. It thrives when developers are free to create art that connects with players. Whether it's gritty horror, stylized violence, or even characters designed to appeal to more primal sensibilities. Anytime someone comes to the game industry advocating to be the adult in the room, always seems to have ulterior motives.
But not you, right? Again, I can't think of a single instance where Jeff has straight up told anyone in the industry, what you're doing is wrong. And by the way, I don't think he can, because if he did, he would have to back that statement with something other than his personal preference. And again, all that's implied by his saying, gaming is about X, Y, and Z, but in response, you could just play devil's advocate. For instance, if I was one of the wokesters, I could throw his words right back at him, say, oh, my escapism, my creativity, and my enjoyment, yeah, it involves making my character non-binary and announcing that at random at the dinner table. So Jeff, would you be willing to tell such a person that they are 100% objectively in the wrong when they do that, and they do not belong in the industry? Because if not, then what exactly is the point of your entire platform?
The gaming's diversity of content is a strength and variety. Yet, when individuals like Dread Roberts step up to try and dictate what adults should find acceptable, they ironically echo the woke voices they so passionately decry.
So what does that mean, Jeff? Do you find what Dread Roberts said unacceptable? Why do you think you ought to dictate that? You're sounding pretty woke there, Jeff. But that's just by your logic.
Let me make this clear. Gaming is not about setting moral boundaries for others. It is about empowering the you to decide what you enjoy.
Isn't your own article telling me gaming is not something? What Jeff fails to realize here is that he is the one setting a moral boundary. In other words, Jeff's objective moral principle is not to enforce objective moral principles. And he fails to recognize the irony of just that.
If a game isn't for you, don't buy it. If a piece of art offends your sensibilities, just walk away.
Or do journalism, right, Jeff? Make a YouTube channel sidelining all these topics and sidestepping your own moral stance on anything. Again, has Jeff ever come out and said anything that is going on in the industry is objectively wrong and needs to be stopped? Because unless one takes a hardline stance against wokeism as an objectively immoral ideology that has no place in the world, much less this industry, then you are part of the problem.
But telling developers what they should or shouldn't make. Nah, bro. That puts you on the same slippery slope as the forces of censorship we've been battling for years.
Well, what's your entire platform built on, Jeff? I mean, you're constantly covering how the AAA industry is dying. Why would you even be talking about it if we were supposed to remain neutral on it? But based on everything you talk about, I can't think of a single reason why anyone ought to care about the industry other than your personal preference. Because according to you, we can't moralize any of this. So that begs the question, why should anyone care about your personal preferences?
The truth is, when you begin drawing moral lines for others, a precedent is set that ultimately stifles creativity and limits the market's ability to decide what succeeds freely. And yeah, of course, some people will always prefer games with gritty realism, while others enjoy vibrant fantasy worlds or even risque designs. That's the beauty of gaming, it's for everyone. Always has been. Let the market dictate success, not some arbitrary moral compass. If a game company wants to make a sex-heavy, nude model, raging party game, okay, they'll have to deal with the ESRB first, and as much as I can't stand the ESRB, There are protocols in place already in the game industry to ensure games don't just slip into the sex abyss.
Wait, so if it's the ESRB making moral dictates, that's fine? Somehow they're objective? And they won't let games slip into the so-called sex abyss? What exactly is the sex abyss, Jeff? You know, at this point in the article, you can probably tell that hardly anyone who is subscribed to Jeff or is invested in his content actually reads any of his articles or really listens to anything that he says. Is anyone else saying, wait, why are we letting the ESRB dictate what does or doesn't fly? Meanwhile, we're also raging at a bunch of people on X who are voicing their personal preferences? Oh, I'm sorry, religious preferences. But you see, this is all reactionary. It's tribal response making. Just don't think about it, Goy. Don't make a stink. Don't rock the boat. Just trust the plan.
The most ironic and troubling part of this debacle is how it mirrors the tactics of the ideological factions that gamers have spent years fighting against. Now that we're winning the cultural war against censorship, another faction emerges, religion, seeking to replace one form of control with another.
Well, apparently you're not winning the cultural war against censorship because you just said they'll have to deal with the ESRB first, right? You did passively mention you can't stand it, but then you said you're okay with it because it ensures games don't slip into the sex abyss. And why are you even concerned about this so-called sex abyss when, later on in this article, you'll hold up freedom of artistic expression as paramount? Does anyone else not see how inconsistent this all is?
The more we argue over what others should be allowed to enjoy, the more restrictive the environment becomes for game developers to push innovation and creativity. This is the same exact path to hell as laid with good intentions thing. Let gamers decide with their wallets. Historically, it's always worked.
That isn't true. History of games shows you can make incredible games and still go bankrupt. Meanwhile, you can make trash nowadays and still come out on top because investors ensure nobody can fail. What gamers are deciding matters very little. But that is what happens when you open the industry up to normies and people who are consuming video games outside the niche that it once was.
The golden years of gaming came from risk-taking and unbridled creativity, not from moral regulation. I'd argue the more moral regulation that comes in, the worse the games end up being.
This is all a fantasy. Do you not understand the word risk in risk-taking? Sure, it's great when your risk-taking succeeds, but if all risk-taking led to success, it wouldn't be much of a risk now, would it? Also, didn't you just mention the ESRB? So saying that developers ever worked under unbridled creativity is absolute nonsense.
This situation is blowing up on social media today, and likely won't go away unless the gaming community collectively remembers one thing: freedom of expression in art is paramount. If we let anyone, be it the woke crowd or these moral, religious grandstanders, take control of that, the future of gaming becomes as bleak as they claim to fear. I never want to lose sight of what made gaming great in the first place, and hope I'm not alone on that.
Here's a hypothetical. Someone makes a game about and killing babies and young children. According to more freedom of expression, Jeff, we shouldn't object to that, right? Now, I don't know what Jeff's response would be. Maybe he wouldn't let his own kids play the game. But is he just going to sit there and say that he would be fine knowing his neighbor's kids are playing those games? Would he be at all concerned about letting his kids interact with those kids? Would he be okay with raising his kids in a world full of other kids who were raised in a world where playing a simulator was okay? Because, after all, freedom of expression is paramount, right? Let's even consider the phrasing there. Freedom of expression is paramount. Okay, who says? You? Okay. Why should I care about what you have to say? After all, it's not based on any moral objective, right? It's just your personal preference, right? And there, why wouldn't wokeness fit under your category of freedom of expression? Isn't wokeness just the projection of the personal preferences of several people within the industry right now? Again, the solution to all this is very simple. You need to make a hardline determination that all this woke stuff is objectively wrong. And you're only gimping yourself along the way if you cannot make that determination. Do the moralizing. That is the only way you win the culture war.